This happened about 3 months ago. I'm Jamie, an astrobiologist, stationed on a rocky planet orbiting Gliese 581. I thought it would be normal. I had been there almost 2 years, mostly scanning for signs of life. But then I found something. I never expected it. At first, I went through my daily routine. I spent hours in the lab analyzing data. I noticed odd energy readings. They were inconsistent, not what I usually saw. I thought, it's just a glitch. But the feeling wouldn't go away. I decided to look closer. I rerun the scans, and the same readings popped up. I felt a mix of excitement and doubt. Maybe I was getting ahead of myself. To clear my head, I stepped outside. The view always took my breath away, with cliffs reaching toward a brown sky. I felt a chill. It wasn't from the temperature. It was something else. Days passed, and those readings haunted me. I dug deeper, and soon I unearthed artifacts buried under the rock. The first piece was strange. Smooth metal marked with symbols. I felt unsettled. Instead of documenting it, the lights flickered. I checked my equipment. Everything seemed fine, but something felt wrong. The next day I uncovered more artifacts, all covered in those same symbols. Each time I found something, the power fluctuated, and strange sounds filled the station. It was a mix of static and whispers. When I tried to locate the source, it all faded away. I was left alone in silence. It messed with my head. Then I saw them, shadows darting outside the windows. I can't explain it, but I felt those shadows were watching me. It was unsettling. I laughed nervously, but my heart raced. What if nobody else saw them? I felt trapped by my own mind. Every night, those shadows grew bolder. The atmosphere changed, too. I felt as though gravity was pulling me down. My breath quickened, and I felt lightheaded. I thought maybe isolation was playing tricks on me. Deep down, I knew it was something else. One evening, while reviewing more data, a flicker on the screen caught my attention. I felt dread, an undeniable feeling that something was there, just out of sight. I wanted to call for help, but as the lights went out, panic gripped me. Then the whispers returned, this time louder, colder. You shouldn't have come here. I spun around. The room was empty. My breath caught in my throat. I was alone, but maybe I wasn't meant to be. I didn't sleep that night. I spent hours staring at those artifacts. I wanted answers. I had uncovered something ancient, but now I felt like a trespasser. Whatever lived here before was still out there, lurking. It felt like I was at the edge of a dark abyss. I never thought this mission would take such a turn. I thought I understood this world, but now I realized I knew nothing. I was in too deep, and I might never escape. I decided that the only way to regain my sanity was to confront the fear head-on. I gathered my gear and headed outside, determined to see those shadows for myself. The station creaked as I stepped onto the rocky surface. The brown sky loomed overhead, a constant reminder of my isolation. I hesitated at the edge of the station. The eerie silence wrapped around me, almost suffocating. But I pressed on, scanning the area for any signs of movement. The dim light from my headlamp flickered against the jagged landscape. Every little sound echoed in the stillness, a pebble rolling or a distant crackling. That's when I noticed it, a faint pulse emanating from the ground beneath my feet like a heartbeat. I knelt down, brushing aside dirt and rocks. The pulsing grew more pronounced, vibrating through my bones. My instincts screamed at me to run, but curiosity pushed me forward. Then I saw it. A small panel, barely visible against the gray terrain, covered in the same symbols as the artifacts in my lab. My breath caught. How had I missed this? I wiped away the dirt, revealing intricate designs that seemed to shimmer. I wasn't prepared for what happened next. A loud noise erupted from the panel, like a door sliding open but with no door in sight. The energy readings on my equipment spiked, and the air buzzed around me, as though a storm was brewing. I stepped back, heart racing, but the ground shook in response, urging me closer. I felt compelled to reach out, to touch it. As my fingers brushed against the cold metal, a faint image flickered to life in my mind. People, or beings, moving through a vibrant city, filled with light. I recoiled, staggering back. Had I just tapped into something beyond my understanding? The whispers returned, sharper now. "You're awakening us." Panic spread through me. I stumbled back, intent on running, but the shadows darted closer, swirling around me. They coalesced into shapes, looming figures that seemed to emerge from the depths of my fears. My breath quickened again, a painful reminder of my growing anxiety. "Leave this place," one of the figures whispered, its voice jagged and sharp. I could barely make out its features, but the eyes pierced through the darkness. It was asking me to turn away from the knowledge I had sought for so long. Fear electrified me, but I also felt a strange pull, an urge to know more. Why were they here? What did they want? I couldn't help but want to understand. But at what cost? Just as I prepared to ask them, everything went dark. The lights from the station vanished, plunging me into a thick blackness. I felt something shift in the air, a heavy presence enveloping me. Then I heard it, a low, vibrating hum that resonated deep within me. I turned, panic rising again. "Where are you?" I shouted, but the only response was silence. I felt utterly alone in the dark, the shadows hovering just out of reach. I had to get back to the station. I needed answers, but suddenly doubts flooded in. What if they were right? Maybe I shouldn't have come here at all. As I turned to flee, a figure stepped directly in my path. Everything about this moment felt profound. I was no longer just a scientist uncovering the past. I had become part of something greater. But what that meant was still a terrifying mystery. I fought against the grip of fear, urging myself to break free from the paralysis that held me in place. My instincts told me to retreat, but something deeper pulled me to that figure. It seemed to shift in form, becoming less menacing and more human. Was it trying to communicate? "Who are you?" I asked, my voice trembling. Silence stretched, and then it spoke once more, a whisper that vibrated through the air. "We are the departed," it said, its voice echoing in the empty darkness. "You have found what was hidden." I squeezed my eyes shut, hoping it would all vanish if I just ignored it. But when I opened them again, arcing through the blackness were flickers of light, shimmering shapes that danced around the edges of my vision. Every pulse of their glow seemed to beat in time with my racing heart. It was as if they were inviting me to step further into the abyss. "Why did you awaken us?" The figure continued, now closer. I could see a shape, a face, but it was blurred, as if seen through fog. My mind raced with panic, yet behind that fear was a surge of desperation for understanding. I didn't mean to," I stammered. "I was just trying to find answers." The words felt inadequate, and I realized I was grasping at straws in a storm. The shadows grew more defined around me, forming a circle, closing in. I took a step back, heart racing, ready to bolt. "What do you want from me?" The figure answered with a tilt of its head. "We exist in the spaces beyond time. You must listen, for only then can you possess the truth." Before I could react, the ground trembled violently beneath my feet. The shadows surged forward, the air crackling with energy. I stumbled, falling back against the cold metal panel I had uncovered earlier. In that moment, a surge of visions flooded my mind, images of worlds bright and bursting with life, and then darkness consuming everything. "Stay," it urged. "You are part of this now." I shook my head, panic rising like bile in my throat. The figures were weaving around me, their whispers melding into one overwhelming chorus. "We need you to help us." Help them? The mere thought made the hairs on my arms stand up. I didn't even know what they were, let alone how I could help. I was just a researcher, a solitary figure on an alien planet. Before I could formulate a response, a searing light broke through the darkness, flooding my vision. I shielded my eyes, feeling the heat wave over me. "Return to the station." The order rang out like a thunderclap. In that moment, I realized it wasn't just my safety at stake. This was their desperate plea. Whatever they had been guarding, it was now unleashed. With a surge of adrenaline, I turned and ran. The shadows surged after me, but the white light pulsed, pulling me back toward the threshold of safety. My mind raced. What lay behind me? What truth had I just stumbled into? Reaching the station, I rushed inside, door slamming shut behind me. I leaned against it, gasping for breath, the reality of what just happened crashing down on me. I knew I had awakened something that could never be put back to rest. A faint echo lingered in the air. A whisper I couldn't quite catch but felt with every ounce of my being. You will not be forgotten. I had to uncover the truth. The stakes were higher than I had ever imagined. But first, I needed to understand what it all meant. My heart pounded as I stood in the dimly lit control room of the station. The monitors flickered around me, the soft hum of the machines grounding me in this sharp moment. I wanted to process what had just happened, but my mind felt like a jumbled mess. Faces, shadows, and whispers danced just beyond reach. I took a deep breath and focused. I needed to gather my thoughts. A loud bang echoed behind me, striking fear back into my chest. I spun around, leaning toward the door, half expecting the figures to come crashing in. I steadied myself. Was I really ready to face whatever lay beyond the safety of these walls? Just then, an alert on the monitor caught my attention. A spike in energy readings. My hands trembled as I leaned closer. The data was fluctuating violently, unlike anything I had seen before. It looked like another wave of that mysterious energy I'd felt earlier, but this time it was coming from the same direction where I had encountered the figure. Why now? I whispered to myself. What's happening? I toggled through the data, hoping for some shred of clarity. Scan results popped up, displaying an array of fluctuating patterns. The spectrogram leafed through various frequencies, but one specific pattern stood out, a rhythmic pulse that matched the odd energy from before. It was almost sentient in its own way. Suddenly, my comm unit crackled to life. Dr. Ellis, do you copy? It was Paul, my research partner. Relief washed over me. I copy, I replied, but my voice felt distant, like it was echoing in a cavern. Get to the main hatch. His voice was urgent. We have an unexpected visitor. Visitor? What are you talking about? A wave of dread washed over me. I wanted to ask if it was one of the shadows, but I couldn't spit the words out. I can't explain now, just hurry. Before I could respond, the communication cut out. I felt the hair on the back of my neck stand up. My instincts screamed for me to stay put, but I couldn't ignore the sense of urgency or my need for answers. If something was happening, I needed to be there. I moved quickly, darting through the station. Each step echoed in my ears, mingling with the adrenaline flooding through me. The flickering lights overhead reflected my confusion and fear. By the time I reached the main hatch, I was practically breathless. Peering through the small window, the world outside revealed nothing but darkness. The distant stars twinkled mockingly, while the only other light came from the dormant machinery around us. I hesitated, half expecting the shadows to leap from the shadows once more. Then everything changed. An intense flash of light erupted outside, illuminating the area in surreal intensity. My heart palpitated as a figure emerged from the dissipating glow. It wasn't human. Only half-formed and indistinct, it seemed to pulse with energy. That's when I saw it. It was not just a spectral image, but something far more substantial, intensifying my dread. The realization hit me. Whatever I had unleashed still lingered, and it had come for me. I stepped back in horror as a chilling voice resonated through the air. You cannot hide from the truth. And suddenly, I knew. The shadows were calling me back. Their ancient secrets were about to be unveiled. The figure loomed outside, a swirling mass of energy and shadows. I tried to turn away, to escape the gaze of that unearthly presence, but my feet felt rooted to the ground. I couldn't look away. Inside me, something bubbled, a mix of fear, curiosity, and the pull of unknown knowledge. Dr. Ellis, the voice called again, smooth and chilling. You are destined to learn what others have forgotten. Panic surged. I shook my head, trying to clear my thoughts. I needed to focus. The only person I could trust was Paul, and I had to get to him. I wasted no time. I sprinted back through the narrow corridors, my breath quickening with every step. The shadows felt closer now, whispering secrets I wasn't ready to hear. As I reached the control room, a cold dread washed over me again. The monitors flickered with data, wavelengths dancing erratically across the screens. But that wasn't what caught my eye. Paul was slumped over the console, unconscious. "Paul!" I rushed to his side, gently shaking his shoulders. I needed him to wake up. The presence outside felt closer now, and it seeped into my skin. I suddenly felt exposed and vulnerable. "Come on, wake up!" My voice felt small in the cavernous room, but it worked. Paul stirred, blinking as he slowly regained his senses. "What happened?" he mumbled, the fog of confusion still clouding his mind. "There's something out there." I pointed toward the main hatch. "We have to get you out of here." He looked past me, then back at the screens. The energy readings. They've spiked again. It's alive. I swallowed hard, my throat tight. "I know." It spoke to me. Paul's eyes widened. "What did it say?" I hesitated, looking for the right words. "It said we can't hide from the truth." "What truth?" he asked, pushing himself up. "What does it want?" "I don't know." My frustration burst forth. "I just know we need to figure this out or get somewhere safe." He nodded slowly, his expression turning serious. "We can analyze the data. It might give us insight into whatever that thing is." He shook his head, clearing the last remnants of confusion. "Let's get to the lab. We need to act fast." Just as we turned, another blinding flash erupted outside, filling the control room with brilliant light. We shielded our eyes, but when the glare faded, a shadow crossed in front of the hatch, something big and unyielding. No longer content to keep its distance, the entity was advancing. My stomach dropped as I realized that whatever secrets it held were about to break free. As we both stood frozen, the thing pulsed with energy, and the very air began to vibrate. "What is it doing?" Paul muttered, fear threading through his voice. Before I could answer, a series of symbols began to appear in the air, illuminated by the strange light. They flickered rapidly, a language I had never seen before, but they felt familiar, as if they were calling out to something deep within me. "Whatever this is," I breathed. "I think it's trying to communicate." Then, with a guttural roar that shook the very walls, the presence surged closer, filling the room with a chill that seeped into my bones. The air crackled with energy, and it was clear now. We were far from safety. Whatever it had to say was about to be unveiled, and we were in no position to stop it. "What do we do?" Paul asked, panic rising in his voice. My pulse raced as the truth loomed just beyond grasp. I had to confront it. I had to be the one to understand. Then I heard it, in a voice that reverberated through my mind. "Prepare to remember." Suddenly I felt as though I was being pulled toward the hatch. I had to go. I had to find out what this entity wanted, no matter the cost. The moment I stepped toward the hatch, the air thickened. It felt like a weight was pressing down on me, pulling me closer to that swirling entity outside. I glanced back at Paul. His eyes were wide with fear. I knew he wanted to stop me, to pull me back to safety, but this was no longer just about survival. It was about the truth. "Stay here," I shouted, my voice barely cutting through the crackling energy. But deep down, I knew he wouldn't listen. Paul was determined, and so was I. With one last look at the shadows outside, I pushed through the door. A rush of cold energy enveloped me. I staggered but kept moving. The swirling figures pulsed brighter, illuminating the symbols in a chaotic dance. I felt the ancient knowledge pressing against my mind, urging me to decipher its meaning. "Dr. Ellis," the voice resonated again, echoing through the darkness. It wasn't just addressing me, it felt like it was reaching into my very being. "It is time to awaken." The shadows shifted, taking on forms, glimpses of creatures I couldn't quite comprehend. Their elongated limbs, shimmering skin, and eyes that glowed like distant stars mystified me. And then it hit me. These were not mere shadows. They were memories of a civilization long lost, a people who had once thrived near distant stars. "Paul," I called out, hoping he could see what I was witnessing. I turned, but he was still back in the control room, shaking his head as if fighting against the pull. I felt a pang of worry, but I was caught in a whirlwind of revelation. The symbols began to resolve into shapes and figures. They told a story, a lore that had been hidden, locked away for centuries. My heart raced with the thrill of discovery, but then, abruptly, the energy shifted. One of the symbols fractured, exploding outwards in a blinding flash. I screamed as it filled the space with unholy light. I couldn't see, couldn't breathe. "Ellis!" Paul shouted, ripping me from my thoughts. "Get back!" As the light faded, I stumbled backward, feeling disoriented. The air buzzed with energy, and I noticed something on the ground where the symbol had erupted. It was a small device, curved and metallic, reflecting the dim glow of the monitors. I bent down to pick it up, heart racing. It was unlike anything I had ever encountered. That might be the key," Paul breathed, joining me at my side. His voice held a note of urgency that sent a chill down my spine. "Key to what?" I asked, my fingers trembling around the alien artifact. The symbols were now etched into my memory, their whispers echoing in my mind. "The data, it's connecting with you." Paul's eyes flickered as he grasped the implications. Maybe it wants us to unlock something. Just as I started to process his words, a deafening howl erupted from outside the hatch. The entity was furious, its form shifting and swirling violently. I looked up, terror mounting. "It's not gonna let us leave!" And just like that, the hatch slammed shut behind us, sealing us in. The once distant yet inviting presence became an acute threat, hungry for the knowledge we were about to uncover. I felt the device grow warm in my hands, an energy awakening within it. I didn't know what lay ahead, but I knew we needed to understand what we had found, and fast. But in the back of my mind, a new question gnawed at me. What if this wasn't just a discovery? What if it was a warning? I stared at the device, its warm surface tingling against my palm. The symbols etched into my memory felt alive, whispering a mix of urgency and fear. It was now clear. This artifact was more than just an object. It was a gateway to something monumental, and whatever it was, we were on the brink of understanding. But would we be ready for the truth? "Paul, what do you think it is?" I asked, my voice shaking slightly. He examined the device closely. "It looks like some sort of key or control mechanism. We might be able to access the data that's connected to us, but we need to do it quickly." Before I could reply, the howling intensified. It twisted like a physical force, rattling the walls around us. I felt my heart pounding in response, each beat reminding me that we were running out of time. "It's angry we touched it," I murmured, my eyes darting toward the now sealed hatch. "We have to hurry." Paul knelt by a terminal, frantically tapping at the console. "I'm trying to access anything related to the anomaly," he shouted over the cacophony. "Maybe the data is stored here. Just give me a minute." Every second felt stretched like gum, weighed down by the tension in the air. The term minute seemed ominous, like a countdown to something terrible. My instincts told me that if we didn't act quickly, we could lose everything. I stood beside him, clutching the device tightly. Its warmth radiated through me, urging me, as if it longed to connect with the terminal. "Do you think it would help if I plugged it in?" "It could, but be careful." Before he finished his warning, I rushed to connect the device to the console. As soon as I plugged it in, the console flickered to life. The screens began projecting streams of symbols, familiar yet complex. I instantly recognized them as some of the same glyphs that had danced around us earlier. "Can you see it?" I asked, my heart racing. "Yes, it's integrating," Paul replied. His fingers flew over the keyboard as lines of data scrolled past, filling the room with an energy that felt almost electric. Suddenly the screens flashed with a vivid image. I stopped breathing for a moment. There it was. A distant planet, eerily similar to Earth, but surrounded by a swirling nebula. A network of structures was visible across the surface, a civilization waiting to be uncovered. "Look at it," I exclaimed. "That's not just a planet. It's a city. A whole world." Then the imagery shifted abruptly. I saw dark figures, indistinct and ominous, moving through that city. They seemed to be aware of us, staring directly through the screen with haunting, glowing eyes. Fear coursed through me. Paul paled beside me. What are they? He stammered, backing away slightly. Before I could answer, an electric jolt surged through the device. The lights flickered, and the howl from outside intensified, drowning out my thoughts. It felt as if the very universe was reacting to our intrusion. "Paul, I can feel it. It's trying to break through," I shouted, panic snapping at my every thought. "We need to get this information and get out." Just as those words left my lips, the console flickered, then went dead. The howling outside turned into a deafening roar, and the entire room shook violently. "Ellis!" Paul's voice barely reached me in the chaos. "We can't let it take us." And in that moment, all I could think was, what if everything we just uncovered was more than simply lost history? What if it was a warning, not about a civilization, but about its end? Then everything went dark. The darkness felt thick and stifling. I tried to blink away the shadows, but they enveloped me completely. I could hear the faint echoes of Paul's voice, but they seemed far away, swallowed by the chaos we had unleashed. "Ellis, are you there?" "Paul?" I called out, my voice sounding small and uncertain. I reached out, trying to find something solid, anything to guide me back to him. My heart raced as panic set in. I could feel the oppressive silence around me, heavy and unsettling, like prey in the presence of a predator. Suddenly, a flicker of light pierced through the gloom. I turned toward it, the glow growing brighter. Just then, a piercing scream echoed through the darkness. It felt primal, laced with agony. My stomach dropped. It sounded like Paul. "Paul!" I shouted, straining to move toward the light. The scream cut off abruptly, leaving only the hum of a lingering energy. I stumbled forward, my hands out in front of me. My fingers brushed against a cool surface. It felt like the walls of the terminal, but the energy surged through it, pulsating with a strange rhythm. "Paul! Ellis!" He sounded closer now, frantic yet hopeful. "Over here!" I sprinted blindly toward his voice, heart pounding. With each step, the light grew stronger. Finally, I burst into a small chamber. My breath caught. Paul was crouching beside the terminal, a faint blue glow emanating from the now active screen. "What happened?" I panted, falling to my knees beside him. "I don't know," he whispered, eyes wide. "I think they're still here. The figures. They're in the system." "What do you mean?" I asked, glancing at the screen. The glowing symbols raced across it like a digital storm. It was mesmerizing, but unsettling. "Are they alive?" He nodded, fear etched across his features. "I saw them, Ellis. They could see us. They're aware." His voice trembled as he continued. "I think they're projecting from that planet." Somehow, we both turned our attention back to the screen. An image emerged slowly. A face, or what looked like a face. It was elongated, almost ethereal, adorned with intricate markings running down its features. The eyes were haunting, holding depths of knowledge that felt ancient and terrifying. "What do we do?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "I think we need to shut it down," Paul replied, his fingers hovering over the controls. "We need to disconnect before..." Before he could finish, the chamber shook violently again. The howling resumed, louder than before, as if protesting our presence. The walls trembled, and I grabbed Paul's arm, fear rising in my chest. "Do it!" I shouted. But before he could react, the screen flared brighter, and the face seemed to shift, morphing into a mass of energy that was both beautiful and horrific. "Ellis!" Paul yelled. "It's not letting us go." I felt the air around us shift, warping, closing in. Just then, a piercing wail erupted from the console, a sound so raw it felt like nails scratching against my soul. In desperation, I reached for the device still clutched in my hand. It pulsed beneath my touch, almost beckoning me. That's when I saw it, I breathed, an idea forming. Maybe it's our way out. We have to try. With a sudden surge of determination, I thrust the device toward the terminal, praying it was the key to breaking this terrible grip. Paul's eyes widened as the energy surged again, surrounding us both. "Please," I murmured, hoping against reason that we could find a way back before it was too late. Then, in a flash, the light exploded around us, and everything went white. The blinding light enveloped us completely, and I felt my body weightless, as if I were floating in an endless sea. Then, as quickly as it had arrived, the brightness faded. I blinked, disoriented, trying to make sense of my surroundings. I found myself on the ground, gasping for air. It took a second to realize I was outside the terminal. The air was cooler and smelled of metal and dust. I looked around, my heart racing, searching for Paul. "Paul!" I shouted, my voice echoing in the empty expanse. "Ellis!" he called back, relief flooding through me when I spotted him a few feet away. He was sprawled on the ground, his eyes scanning the horizon like he couldn't believe we were out. "Are you okay?" I rushed to him, helping him to his feet. "I think so," he said, rubbing his temples. "But where exactly are we?" He looked around, bewildered. The landscape was barren and desolate. Strange structures loomed in the distance, half buried in the dust, their architecture foreign and unsettling. I recognized the flickers of what looked like energy dancing in the air around us, similar to what we had seen in the terminal. I shuddered, remembering the figures, the face. What if they brought us here? Paul stepped closer to me, his expression tense. "We need to find out what's going on before—" A crackling sound interrupted him, a sharp static that seemed to originate from the structures. We both turned, instincts on high alert. The energy swirled around, coalescing into forms that looked like shadows creeping toward us. "What the hell?" I whispered, eyes wide. "Stay close," Paul muttered, inching backward. Suddenly, a bright flash erupted from one of the structures, illuminating a glyph-covered wall. The symbols glowed with an intense blue light, and for a moment, the shadows froze, almost as if they were in awe. "Do you see that?" I pointed, captivated despite my fear. "It's like a language." "Maybe it's a warning," Paul said, squinting at the symbols. "Or a way to communicate." Before I could respond, the shadows lunged. I barely had time to react as Paul yanked me back and we ran toward the glowing wall. I felt a pulse of energy as we approached, and the symbols began to swirl faster. "Ellis, we need to touch it," Paul urged. I hesitated. What if it's dangerous? But the shadows were closing in, advancing like a storm. I took a deep breath and stepped forward, placing my palm against the glowing surface. Instantly, I felt a jolt of energy surge through me, and images flashed in my mind. Visions of a civilization thriving, advanced technology, and then chaos, a downfall. "Ellis!" Paul shouted, panic in his voice. I turned, and for a moment the shadows hesitated, shifting behind the light as if something held them back. But just as quickly they regrouped and surged forward. We only had seconds. I looked at Paul, determination surging in my chest. We could learn something vital here. We can't back down now. Then, as if answering our resolve, the wall began displaying more scenes, fragments of knowledge, lost warnings. There had to be answers in this chaos. But then, I noticed something darker in the corner of one of the images. Something that looked like us, intertwined with the energy, trapped in a web of its design. That's when the chilling realization struck. We weren't just uncovering knowledge. We were part of a far bigger mystery, and whatever was here wanted us. I pulled my hand back from the wall as if it had burned me. "No, no, no," I whispered, panic tightening my chest. The shadows surged closer, their forms jagged and indistinct, and I could sense that whatever they were, they hungered for our presence, our connection to the very energy that surrounded us. "Ellis, we have to go!" Paul shouted, glancing at the encroaching figures. His urgency flickered a frantic pathway through my fog of fear. But as I turned to run, the swirl of symbols exploded back into my mind, and I felt a strange pull toward the glowing glyphs. They were alive, alive like a warning bell tolling deep within the marrow of my bones. "This isn't just about understanding," I said, barely able to catch my breath. "It's like they're keeping guard, Guarding what? Paul's voice cracked, jarring me back into the moment. The shadows pressed in on us, their serrated edges glinting in the light. We were out of time. I don't know, I yelled, my voice breaking. We need to find a way to dispel them. Or... My eyes darted to the interest of the glyph-covered wall. Or to understand what this all means. Are you insane? We have to leave. His grip on my shoulder felt like a lifeline, a tether keeping me anchored to the here and now. Wait, I blurted, and with adrenaline coursing, I reached again for the pulsing surface, feeling a surge of determination. My finger met the cold, glowing symbols, and a shockwave surged through me like lightning. Colors exploded in my mind, shapes and visions colliding in a kaleidoscope of energy. Alice! Paul's voice dimmed to a hum as the light expanded, wrapping around us. The shadows halted, almost reverently, drawing back as if the illumination had robbed them of their aggression. The visions began to clarify, images of spacecraft soaring through a vibrant city, technology pulsing, beings in harmony. But they twisted suddenly, shadows darting through the mix. I saw a planet overwhelmed by chaos, darkness swallowing it whole. It didn't just show me a history, it heralded a caution, an urgent warning against whatever intermingled knowledge and power we were grappling with. Suddenly, a piercing scream echoed, not from me but from the depths of the visions, the shout of a civilization in its final moments. The figures, those distorted reflections of desperation, were not simply shadows. They were echoes of lost souls, guardians of a fate turned wrong. With renewed urgency, I shouted, "Maybe this connection leads to the deeper answers. What if we can reverse this, undo what's been done?" The ground shuddered, and with it, the realm around us pulsed. Paul's grip tightened on my arm. "And what if you're digging our graves deeper?" "Then at least we dive knowing," I implored, eyes locked on his. He looked everywhere but at me, lost in thoughts I could only guess at. "Let's try." He finally relented, though I saw the trepidation etched on his face. "But if it gets out of control..." I nodded, and together we returned our focus to the wall, feeling its warmth, its energy draw us again. Our palms met the cool surface, the symbols beneath alive with our shared connection. The pulses of light intensified, merging the shadows and the bright creations into a frenzied spectacle, transcending our surroundings. I braced for impact, for possession, for the wrath of the shadows returning. We needed clarity, and we needed it now. An explosion of energy erupted from the glyphs, sending a shockwave through the air. I felt overwhelmed, buoyed, lifted into unknown currents of knowledge as the waves of energy swept over us, pushing against the figures lurking just beyond. We were at the nexus, and I felt the truth begin to unfurl. And just as it seemed we were about to break into understanding, everything shifted again. The shadows surged forward, unruly and aggressive, crashing against the energy barrier with deafening howls that echoed against the metal walls of our arena. A brilliant flash pierced through the chaos. "Ellis, whatever you just did, it's not safe," Paul yelled, yanking me back. The barrier wavered. Desperately, I pressed harder against the glowing symbols, feeling the pulsating history yearning to break free. I could see scattered remnants, lost lives, glimpses of profound understanding. But every vision was tainted, each laced with fear, anger, regret. I inhaled deeply, determined. "We can contain this. We need to show them they can pass. They don't have to be trapped." "Ellis!" Paul's voice rang out like a desperate plea. The barrier was faltering, and the shadows were lunging closer, desperate to reclaim a territory they believed was theirs by birthright. "Just hold on!" I shouted, riding the wave of determination coursing through, pushing every shred of hope through my palms into the glyphs. A final flash engulfed us, and the shadows surged forward, the energy breaking in a myriad of shimmering lights. With a deafening roar, the masses broke apart, swirling wildly as if caught in a cyclone of past and present, futures lost colliding with ethereal designs. I felt weightless, floating just at the edge of understanding, a tether to the world slipping away. And then, with one final blinding surge, everything stopped. I blinked through a blanket of light, breathing deeply, cradled in silence. The shadows were gone. The air had cleared. But we were not alone. I turned, and what lay before us was both alien and familiar. A vibrant expanse echoing with possibilities. A doorway within the solution found in the glyphs. In front of us, figures stood tall, bearing the same markings as the glyphs we'd seen, yet they pulsed with life, not despair. They beckoned us kindly. "I don't know if we should trust them," Paul murmured beside me, fear leaking into the wonder that had washed over my body. "I don't think we have a choice," I whispered back, glimpsing the knowledge in their glowing eyes, a wisdom born from long-lost experiences. They were no longer shadows. They were seekers like us. But as we stepped forward, I couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't the end of our story. There were still questions echoing in my mind. How could we decipher the lessons from these beings? And what kind of balance had we tipped, entwined into the very fabric of existence itself? Life was always filled with uncertainties, dancing between fear and the unknown. And as I ventured into the light with Paul at my side, I couldn't help but wonder whether in seeking the truth, we had become a new bridge between worlds, one shrouded with the promise of understanding, yet still drenched in questions that lingered like the shadows of a moment past.